Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome. My name is James Welsh. I am the author of this book here, Corroborating Evidence, UFO Investigation of Millennium, which I published on July 8th, 2014. Now, it says here, let's just run through the blurb. Corroborating Evidence is a result of a 14-year investigation into a series of UFO sightings which took place during December 1999. Author James Welsh became eyewitness to a series of UFO encounters in Glasgow, Scotland, which motivated him into making an official UFO report. That began what was to become the UFO Investigation of the Millennium. On August 31st, 2012, he discovered the hidden presence of a cloaked UFO on NASA's STS-103 Hubble servicing mission images. Blah, blah, blah. Up until now, anomalies captured on NASA footage have been dismissed as ice crystals and space debris. This object cannot be categorized quite as easily and will leave NASA with a lot of explaining to do. Now, let's just go down a little further. Here is some of my peers and some of the people that were involved in the research, not the research, but in the construction of Corroborating Evidence. We have here Deborah Jane East, and she says, I've left no stone unturned with my quest for documentation on what myself and others saw in the night sky Glasgow 1999. Corroborating Evidence is the most intensively documented and simply the best piece of work I have ever read in a UFO sighting. The fact he also caught NASA with a smoking gun concerning the capture of a cloaked UFO in the NASA STS-103 Hubble servicing mission images is the icing on the cake. There we have Wilbur Allen, UFODC.com. The UFO investigation in the Millennium is well researched and presented. The information is 100% consistent with my research. And that's Wilbur Allen. And then we had the late Nick Pope, God bless him, God rest his soul. Meticulously researched and expertly put together, this fascinating book will be of huge interest to anyone with the slightest interest in UFOs. And then we've got Ron Halliday, who is one of Scotland's top, if not top, as we would say, UFO researcher, paranormal researcher. And then Malcolm as well. The two of them are Scotland's two top paranormal researchers. Now I said UFO again. So yeah, Ron especially is the one that really got me. I've certainly not read a better documented book on UFO sightings. So that was incredible. When I first read that, I was like, wow. And then we got Malcolm Robinson, a fine read and worthy of your attention for the enormous implications that it suggests. And then we have finally Corroborating Evidence is a great read, well documented research. James Welsh definitely has a keen eye and worked hard to produce a super look at revealing the deceit, lies and misinformation this agency, NASA, has shrouded itself in for decades. Not to mention there is a lot more yet to be revealed behind an organisation designed specifically for the military and not the people, entirely controlled by the US Department of Defence. A definite wake-up call. And Nat Yari was a external NASA contractor that was brought in. He used to be an IBM programmer, a coder. Yeah, that is what my peers had to say about Corroborating Evidence. So it took me a long time to put together. I unconsciously put it together. It was quite strange how it all came together. So cut long story short, there's no way that's going to be possible with me, but yeah, so I had sightings right through the entire month of December 1999, on the 4th, 10th, 11th, 14th, 15th and 25th of that month. Now this book is a documentation of my prior efforts looking into the UFO phenomenon and what I found and why it deserves a lot of attention. I'm not looking for any attention, but my research findings should command that. Now, we'll get into that in a little second or two, but the bottom line is that if we go now to .gov.uk, government, publications, UFO reports in the UK, and we slide all the way down here to 1999, and then we slide all the way down through this PDF, and we get to the last page. We see here December the 15th, 1999, 3:30 AM, Glasgow, Strathclyde, multiple bright lights. Occasionally red and green, some are moving and flashing, streaks of light, erratic, occasionally in formation, and then splitting. Now this went on to become the longest report for the entire year by just 2 words. So yeah, we'll get the longest report for the entire year. So being the longest report, it's also the most informative, because I tried to, even when I gave that description, I must have realised that I was trying to fit in as much information as possible. And there's what was jotted down anyway. That's the main thing. So there's quite a lot of information there regarding this, but the streaks of light, very important, and again occasionally information, and then splitting. You can tell by that that's not your average everyday commercial aircraft. So there's my official report from December the 15th, 1999, and this is really important. Why? Because the Space Shuttle Discovery was not launched until 4 days later, on December the 19th, and it was 10 days before the STS-103 Hubble service and mission images were taken during Hubble's redeployment back into orbit. So let me just run through quickly here. Let's have a look at 734. Oh. It's getting dark here, can't see. 734-69. We'll start there. In fact, no, we won't. We'll start with 73. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, let's go. Here we are, and this is the gateway to the astronaut spotted photography of the Earth. https://eol.jsc.nasa.gov. Okay, so you can see that there. Unless I manage to hack the internet and put this up and get the same URL as NASA without them noticing, I would say it's pretty safe to say that this is legit. Why am I way up at 4? I know why am I way up at that size, right? We'll talk about that later. Okay, so in 2001, I first came across UFO magazine, which was edited at the time by Graham Birdsall. That is no longer with us, I'm afraid. So I came across, I think it was April edition, and then I think it was, I'm not too sure, I need to go back and dig the actual magazine out. But I was standing in a newsagent's one day, went to get served, and out the corner of my eye I noticed that alien staring at me, and I went, huh? And I turned around, and there on the shelf was UFO magazine, and the title for the main article was "It Is Time," and I'm like, whoa, I'm having that. So that was me. So I bought UFO magazine, read through it, bought it the next month, and in the following month article there was a small the following month's edition, there was a small article about a student in the West End of Glasgow that was testing a new digital camera over on the West End, and they photographed a UFO December 2001. So I was absolutely elated when I found this out, because what was strange about it all was that after my encounters I knew they would return. Don't ask me why. I knew they'd be back at some point. So the following December 2001, I'd been obviously keep my eye open throughout the month, and then I find out about this December 2000. Sorry, and then into 2001, I'm finding out about this photograph that taken over the West End. So I'm like, whoa. So I got in touch with Graham Birdsall, phoned him, and I says, listen, I had an entire series of UFO events during December 1999, and Graham was like, right, well, get it all written down, get me an account of what happened, and I'll publish it. Okay, no problem. So I also contacted Ron Halliday there, one of Scotland's top paranormal researchers, because he ran a small article in the Times, a small feature that was regularly, every Friday or whatever it was. So got in touch with Ron, got in touch with Graham, and I said, look, obviously got in touch with Ron. I said, look, I witnessed paranormal activity during December 1999. Want to talk to you about it. Kept it very brief because I didn't want to freak him out. So I was encouraged by Graham to write an account of what happened, and I spent the next while wondering how I was going to go about it, and I started writing it out. I was working full time, so I was only getting to a couple hours here and there to put this together. So I decided to just tell it all from a first person perspective and tell it as was, and just put my heart in my sleeve and say, look, this is how I felt, it's so on and so forth. So that was that. So that got the ball rolling, and Ron came out to see me in February, I think it was 2002, February the 15th, 2002. Ron Halliday came out to my parents' house and met with myself and all of the other eyewitnesses that were involved in these events, because I wasn't the only one to observe these things that month. And my sister still has an old videotape somewhere, one of these wee tiny camcorder videotapes somewhere stored with that actual meeting. And there must have been, like 18 people or something in my house that night. It was incredible. There was all the other eyewitnesses to these events, and then the rest of my pals and stuff, and then friends had brought friends of theirs round to the house because they knew this guy was coming round. So it was quite an informative meeting. What I did was went through the month's events, and I would introduce each eyewitness on when we arrived at the date in question or the event in question, and then I would introduce them to Ron and let them have their say. So it was a very informative little night. But when Ron left that night and he was going down the garden path, I said to him, what do I do now? I was panicking when he was leaving. I said, what do I do now? And he went, keep researching and keep writing. And I'm like, okay, good advice. And that was it. From then on, I decided, right, I'm going to make a stab at researching this. Now, I forgot to mention, after making that official report to it was actually air traffic control at Glasgow Airport. It's quite funny because I remember phoning the airport on the night, and they put me I could get put through the switchboard, and Glasgow Airport, can I help you? I says, can you put me through to the tower, please? Boop boop, fucking put right through, you know what I mean, in a heartbeat. And I'm like, hello. And so I got to give my report to an air traffic controller, who was I gabbed away with, but he says, look, I really need to get off the phone because I'm guiding in planes. And I'm like, right, not a problem. So that was that, and that was that was the 15th of December 1999. Now, I'm having to take you to this. So I started looking into it for years and years and years. And what I started to do was, I thought, right, I've now written an account. I had it published October 2001, And I say published, I had it ready and then I passed on copies to Ron Halliday and Graham Birdsall. So Ron could confirm in theory that he had a copy of this written account going through all of the dates in question as early as October 2001. So years and years pass, and I decided with my descriptions that were in the written account that I put together, I called it the 11th hour, which is really interesting. And what's also very interesting is that the beginning of corroborating evidence starts with Genesis. There's like Genesis, the origin of the investigation. But the very fact that I had Genesis in my consciousness at the time, well, putting all this down is very interesting, but that will be for a much later upload. Now, so I used the descriptions in my own written account, what the likes are, and my written report there that went to the Ministry of Defence. And I thought, right, I'll run that as I ran a manual algorithm where I used my own descriptions and started looking for other reports made around the same time as my own report and own encounters, and looked for keywords that were also present in other people's reports so as I could show the similarities and go, look, it isn't just my word for it, there's what Tom, Dick and Harry across the world are all saying. So that's what I started to do, and I started to build up a timeline of events that took place that month. Now, because of all the time zones involved around the world, it became so much easier for me to begin building a spreadsheet with the GMT. I'd have to go and take the local time for every event and then transfer it into a GMT timeline, list the GMT timeline, and then list the local time, the time difference, and then, you know, I was able to get a chronological series of events, so there was it wasn't going to be staggered and back to front and all that with all the different reports going all around the world. So I was just trying to make it easy for myself. So I started constructing this massive database, and it accumulated with somewhere in the region of 230 UFO reports made from December the 1st to December 31st. And before you knew it, I realised that I had built up this entire timeline, and I started to note that there were overlapping sighting events that were taking place. And that's when I started to realise that it wasn't just one or two craft we were talking about here. We were talking about a massive presence around the globe. There was like 4 and 5 events all taking place simultaneously around that month, and there was numerous days when this happened. So it all ended up becoming a historical sweep right through that entire month. And as I say, I built up the timeline and I started to get a much better picture of what happened around the world that month. But I started to realise that I was constructing this, I was getting a much more informed picture of what was going on, basically, and I'm like, okay, so I was becoming aware of this, and I'm like, well, this is not it was, you know, a chunky piece of work that highlighted the extent of UFO activity around the globe during that month. So I knew it wasn't my events, weren't an isolated event, and I had scores and scores and scores of other reports with similar, if not identical, descriptions to the ones you can see right here that go all the way back to December the 15th, 1999. So that's what I was all about with the inception of doing all this, because all I was trying to do was say, look, my report predates a lot of the other reports that were made. So it's not like I've looked at other reports and then taken down the details and then reported one sighting. This all happened after my report had already been filed, and some of these reports weren't filed till 2001, 2003, etc. So my written account and this report predate the research, and that's very, very important, as I say, because it was 4 days prior to the launch of Hubble, 4 days prior to the launch of Discovery to upgrade and repair Hubble during December 1999 from the 19th to the 26th. So so I started taking down all these eyewitness descriptions and reports, and it was becoming quite a dossier of information. And then I decided, right, I'm going to now go back through history, and I'm going to start going through all the reports and all the Blue Book reports and stuff like that, and once again, run the exact same algorithm and use my own terms and descriptions against historical reports. So I know all the historical reports sort of predate my own event, but as I say, I wasn't alone that one. To the other eyewitnesses to 99% of these events that took place. So as time went by, a decade went by, and it became 2010, and I was stuck in the middle of this big historical search going right back through time, and I was working full time, so I was only getting a couple of hours here and there to do it. So it was all done in very small increments, but I decided to keep going at it. So 2010, May 2010, I learned about NASA frames STS-103-734-58 and 59. Then later in October that year, I learned about NASA frame STS-103-734-73, containing a solid structured physical craft, or containing an object that was rumoured to be so here it is here, and you can see there's this area here. Now I don't know if you should be able to see this, but there is a very, very, very thin blue line coming right across here. That's very important. This is like a tiny little low visibility photon beam, a laser beam. Very, very low there, and we have this partial double image of all this area here. So if I zoom back out now, yeah, look at this thing. It's not the interior of the shuttle. I ended up obviously doing my due diligence and got all the photographs of the interior of the upper flight deck of Discovery, and nowhere, anywhere, are these features to be found. So the likelihood of it being a reflection of the interior is pretty much zero. So with that, very, very interesting. There was also, as I say, 58 and 59, which apparently contain entities. So I say apparently, they do contain entities. So here's frame 58. And here's frame 59. Oh no, I'll need to. There is one there. There's the main man. And if we look here, we can see his hand. Where have we seen this hand before? Skinny Bob. Okay, very important. That will become very important at a later point in time. Now, at the bottom of STS-103-734-58, there is, I should say, evidence of windows that come all the way along here with interior lighting, and we can see that these two windows here are, the light is escaping them, but the rest of these, there's lots of arches that come all the way along here. Now, I say arches, but they go all the way up, there's rails. A long story, I'm not going into it just now, but the bottom line is that there are entities at the bottom of this image behind those windows. So I was able to pick out the silhouette of a head with a light around it and a torso, and realised that that was a being. Once I realised that that was a being, I realised that the light was being prevented from escaping because there is a massive crowd standing all the way along here stopping the light from escaping these windows. So once I realised that this was a solid structured physical craft complete with occupants obscuring the light from escaping and therefore causing this darkened area, I realised that the two up the top also had to be in the same craft, albeit in a higher up observation deck, and that became the focus of my attention in June 2021. But I need to take you right back in time again just now. So we have this frame here, 73. So it wasn't until 2 years later, in 2012, that I had finally completed my historical sweep, going all the way back to 1898, and all the way up to 1999. And I'm like, whoa. So I was going through all the information, and I thought, right, I'll put this all into a manuscript. So I had that's what I had been doing. So I realised when I was going through the manuscript and reviewing it, when I came to December the 19th, I recalled the launch of Discovery to upgrade Hubble, and then I remembered this picture, and I went, whoa. And I'm like, right, okay, well now I have an open road ahead of me because I finished all the historical UFO research that I wanted to carry out, and that gave me a clear desk, if you like. So I then turned my attention in 2012 solely to examining this particular photograph and trying to establish whether or not the claim held up, because it was being officially cited that this was nothing more than a reflection, and I wanted to see if that held water or not, because I realised the significance and the importance that this photograph held if I was able to establish that this is indeed a solid structured physical object in orbit with Discovery and Hubble during Hubble's redeployment on Christmas Day, the very same day that I had the last of my experiences. And that's when I started to look into the STS-103 Hubble service and mission records. So in order to go on to determine whether or not this was either a reflection or a real craft, I managed to navigate my way through the sequence of images, and it wasn't easy at the time because all of the frames weren't listed, but I realised that when I was looking at I kept the URLs for frame 58, 59 and 73, and when I put them together into my manuscript and I went to go and click on them one day, I went, oh wait a minute, all these are the exact same URLs except for the frame number. And I thought, oh, what if I was just to change the frame number on the URL and hit enter? And I did that, and I was able to access the entire mission role. And this is before all these images were indexed and available in a rolling format. So I actually had to indirectly hack into these publicly available mission images, simply because there wasn't the facility to go back and forth through them all. It was only by having the individual URL that you could access them. So they were kind of in public view but hard to access. But now it's all different. You can access them once you're logged on. That's you can go back and forth through them. So that's what I did, and I started changing the URL and indirectly hacked the entire sequence, or the entire row 734. I picked out quite a few files throughout the mission role, but I decided to stick solely with the redeployment sequence of 10 images, from frame 66 through to 76, because they all appear to contain traces of this craft. And that's when I went, right, okay, well, because this is exactly why I wanted to look at the other mission images, because I believed there was other photographs of it, and that's what spurred me on, because obviously I knew the significance of all of this. So that's how all that came about. And as I say, I then looked at the 10 individual images, and I started to pore over them with a fine tooth comb, and started to get a better idea of what happened within that timeline. And the data showed that during the redeployment of the Hubble Space Telescope, a flyby of this object took place. So I thought at first it was just an initial flyby during the redeployment. I thought they're re-releasing Hubble into orbit. These aliens are wondering, could it be a weapon, whatever it is, they're curious, they're interested, they want to know what we are dropping into space, and they want to take a close-up look at it. I thought, that makes a lot of sense, you know. And that's what spurred me on to look through the sequence. So with regards to it all, well, that's what I came to understand initially through looking at the sequence. Now, what was really interesting was that 66, 67, 68, 69, 71, 72, 3, 4, 5 and 6 all show traces of this craft, except for frame 69 at first glance. So I found it curious that there was evidence of this craft, or this object, in all the photographs except for frame 69, which was mid-sequence. And I thought, well, how can it be in a photograph before and after, but not be in frame 69? I thought, that's really strange. And that is what forced a much closer look at NASA frame 69. So there's other elements I want to talk to you about this frame, but we'll get back to that at another point. So let's just have a look at frame 69 here. And oh, Matt. Alright, okay. Tripping balls. Right, okay, here we go. So here's frame 69, and at first glance you don't see anything. But if we zoom in, there we have our horizontal lasers again. Very, very ultra thin line of photons running across here. But there's also this area here. Let me just reduce this. Oops. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. So there's this area here, just above this horizontal. It's not entirely horizontal, but it's almost horizontal. There's a few lines that are present, a sort of squiggly detail with a line coming over it, and then we have a few squiggly details underneath. This really caught my eye, and I'm going, well, what is this? So I ended up starting to enhance this particular image, and I went on to reveal the presence of the cloaked craft that is present in frame 73. And I thought, well, and what happened was is that I thought, well, if it's taking a close-up inspection, it doesn't want to freak out the crew of the orbiter, so maybe it's cloaked itself in order not to freak everybody out. I thought, well, so it's having a covert look at what is taking place. So I found that really interesting. That was my initial thoughts. So let's just see if I can get through and find what I'm looking for here. I've got a lot to get through with you, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be quite a long presentation, I think, especially if I'm running about looking for things. But I decided this was the best way to do it, so I can walk you through everything and let you see everything as is, as I explain it to you all, because either that, nobody's going to believe what I have to say unless I walk you through it all. So, I thought I was at it there, but we need to go right back to right back to the beginning. Bum 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 bum. There we go. So 12 years ago this was uploaded, and let me just stop before I play this, and I'll just play it because there's no audio. Okay, so what I did was I used an image editor and started making edits of the same image, just running the same, downloading the image, running it through an image program, changing the lighting and the contrasting and stuff, and I was able to extract the craft based on those features that I told you that I first came across. Now those features are what is seen on NASA frame 73. Now I've been on to establish exactly what they are. So this is just the same image that's been re-edited, and then I'll download another copy, edit it again, and then what I did was I put them all together into a slideshow, but they overlay one another, and then I was able to let that play out. But so you could, and the only reason I've done this was so you can see the so you could see for yourself the transition of light to dark with it as I bring more light on it and then take it away. So we're able to actually expose this craft is indeed present. Now here's the thing about it. I studied photography as a result of my UFO encounters, and went to college in 2003 at Cardonal to learn photography, or learn an introduction to photography and producing your own prints. So that's why I was interested in developing my own photographs and all this carry on. I was really wanting to get right into photography. So because what happened was I ran about for 3 years with a disposable camera in my pocket, just in case. I was never ever going to be caught out without a camera, so I always carried a stupid wee camera in my pocket. But I started to realise that it was, it was a bit pointless. So I ended up investing in a Nikon F65 SLR, and I wanted to learn how to use it. So I had already been to Egypt, this was my third time going to Egypt since the Millennium, and I took the camera with me and got a lot of good shots, and came back and showed my tutor my portfolio when I first started the course. So the tutor, Eric, told me that everything the course taught I already knew. I had already self-taught myself, so I was like, whoa, that's good. But obviously we had discussions about photography, and he says you understand the relationship between light and dark. He says that is the essence of photography, and you seem to have picked this up. I can't teach you anything. So I'm like, well, alright, happy days. But so bottom line is the relationship between light and dark, light physics 101. This is where it gets really interesting. The redeployment of the Hubble Space Telescope took place December 25th at 23:03 GMT. It happened while sunrise was occurring over Australia's Gold Coast. So sunlight was coming up over the Earth, and it was illuminating both the orbiter and the Hubble Space Telescope. So when I first revealed the presence of this craft, I was very perplexed over the dark area off to the right hand side there, until I started thinking about it logically, and I went, right, okay, well there's a big dark contrast compared to that bright area all over the side of it. Why is that? And I'm like, it's a lack of light that's hitting that particular area that's causing that to happen. Bingo, the pin dropped. I realised that this was the shadow profile of the Hubble Space Telescope, which was being cast onto this particular object, because Hubble is sitting directly in front of it, and therefore obscuring the amount of light that hits that particular surface. So I had my eureka moment on August the 31st 2012, and I realised, hold on a minute, I've now found scientifically backed evidence that is a solid structured physical craft in orbit with Hubble and Discovery during its redeployment. So it was like, this is got to be the most solid piece of evidence in ufology so far, because I have backed up what is seen on NASA frame 73. I've identified same features here in this image, plus we have the shadow profile of the HST. Now, I ended up doing further work on this image, and you can see with further, even in this, but I can't enlarge this just now. I suppose I could, but it means reducing the page and then bringing it all up. But the bottom line is we have this rounded area, and the outside you can see a definitive 45-degree angle, but with further examination could also determine the inside 45-degree angle of the solar array, and you can actually see the kind of differential in the light with the panelling, because there's so many squares across the framework on the other side, and we have that on this. So, and there's also the light differential between the lower solar panel and the barrel. So it was definitive that this is the shadow of Hubble, and it confirmed that the object on NASA frame STS 103-734-57 is indeed in orbit with Hubble and Discovery. So this was my big eureka moment in 2012, when I realised that I had found definitive evidence that this is a solid structured physical craft in orbit of unknown origin. So I thought, well, yes, party time, I have found the corroborating evidence that I was looking for. So I was like, yes. Now, to take you right back, when I got my official reply from the British Ministry of Defence, I ended up writing them a follow-up. Like, I lost my reply at one point because I was walking about with my pocket forever, showing it to all my pals and stuff, going like, check this out and all that. I ended up losing the reply, and ended up writing back to the British LD, like, can you please send me out a copy of my letter that you sent me for my records, blah blah blah, and while you're at it, any further word on military activity during December 1999, military activity over Glasgow, I think it was. So they ended up writing me a reply saying, unless there is corroborating evidence, we do not look into UFO sightings, because we are not an aerial identification service, and unless there is there is no evidence that there was any hostile or foreign military aircraft. So it was like, I'm not talking about hostile or foreign military aircraft, I was talking about, unexplained lights. So so I liked what that I liked that corroborating evidence. I thought that's a really good name for a title. And then the UFO Investigation of the Millennium became a bit of poetry, because it was a play on words. It was like, it's the UFO Investigation of the Millennium, but it was really talking about the specific timeline, the dates surrounding Y2K. So there's all that information for you just now, and that's quite a lot to take in, so I will leave it at that at the moment. Before I go, just while we're here, there is a darkened shadow here, just to the left of this area here. You'll see a little dark area just on the lip of this bit, and there's a bit of illumination just under it. It comes along, comes down, and comes along like an S, or it's like an S, but it comes along, up, and then along again, and that turns out to be the shadow profile of Canadarm, ladies and gentlemen. That is Canadarm. So this, as I say, I've just taken my time pointing out exactly what this is. With regard to this partial double image, at first I was under the impression it was all to do with refraction from the multiple panes of glass that the orbiter has. I think it has something like 5 or 7 panes of glass that are very, very closely stuck together. And I thought maybe it's a double image just getting caught between the panes. And obviously the camera itself, depended on how many the telephoto lens that was being used, the amount of lenses that would be in effect through the camera and then the actual window, I thought it was a distinct possibility. But it turns out that this partial double image is being generated by the craft itself, and that all plays a big part in how I was able to understand how these things actually cloak. So, and that's obviously what we have on frame 69, with the cloaked craft in plain view right in front of us, with only that tiny little bit of detail shown. And as I say, we've got that there. I can bring that out a little bit more. I think when we get into the green and orange we get the best effect. I think I'm past that part. So this was all my initial work on this particular image. So this, there we go, it's starting to get illuminated there. That's as good as it's getting, I think. But yeah, this craft sitting directly in front of Hubble, and obviously right in front of the orbiter during the redeployment of the HST in December the 25th, 1999, and I was able to confirm that using logic, hard work, and wearing Sherlock Holmes hat. So light physics 101, that is what is going on with the right hand side there with the darkened area. It's the shadow profile of the HST. We've got the rounded area, and then we have the 45 inner and outer angles with the lower solar panel. So that is 100% confirmed as a solid structured physical craft. So I'll leave it with you just now, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll get back to this. We'll get back into more regarding this research that I've undertaken over the last 25 years, because I've got a lot to offload, because as it turns out that what is contained on these NASA mission images became the Rosetta Stone that unlocked 80 years of UFO activity, and I've got 80 years backing up what is seen in these mission images, which confirm again and again and again and again and again what I first discovered in 2012. So at the moment, the state of ufology, ufology's turned into a farcical subject, with so many jabberwocks and chancers that are being nothing but a cancer on this subject, and so many people out there claiming to be whistleblowers that are anything but. What's been happening since 2017 has been nothing but a coordinated psychological operation, which they are now all caught red-handed in, because it's now obviously very, very apparent that the NASA UAP study and press conference were nothing but theatre. So when we talk about Doge, NASA should be one of the first agencies to be shut down for waste, fraud and abuse on the taxpayer, for blowing money on things that they shouldn't be blowing money on. Leo Elizondo has claims of searching for the UAPs for the Pentagon between 2010 and 2017. Obviously that doesn't hold water when you take this evidence into consideration. Any claims that he makes about secretly trying to find out what these things are for the government just falls apart instantly, because it was very, very clear that the Pentagon / Defence Department were already very well aware what the UAPs were, going back to 1999. But it goes much, much further back than that, all the way back to June 1947. So I'll be talking about that more as time goes on, because I've got a lot to get through. But there's just a little introduction to myself and my UFO research that I have undertaken over the last 25 years, 2.5 decades, looking into one UFO case, my own, and all the supporting evidence that I have that backs up my original account and report, which is right there, documented, time-stamped, and going all the way back to 4 days prior to the launch of Discovery on December the 19th. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in, and I will hopefully catch you in the next one. But the reason that I'm coming forward with all this information now is because my teeth are almost powder with all the gritting that they're doing, with all the jabberwocks that are talking. So I've got a lot to disclose, and a lot of people are going to end up with a lot of egg on their faces, because it's pretty much established that so many of them are talking out their backsides. So I don't really appreciate cancerous elements within ufology. So that's that, and that's why I didn't tolerate any of the nonsense from Larry Warren when I started to look into his claims, which just don't hold water. I mean, honestly, some of the things that were claimed, deer jumping over an 18-foot fence on an Air Force base perimeter fence, defying it, it's like the bionic deer. So things like that, feeling the sun warm his face at 6:30 in the morning when the sun didn't come up to 8:15 is another. So how all these things happened is a complete fantasist. So I don't take kindly to people diluting ufology, because at the end of the day, ufology is only as strong as its weakest link, and we can't have jabberwocks coming on and absolutely trying to use this subject as their own little cash cow. And I get very, very irate at that after having so many genuine encounters. So I don't take jabberwocks and chancellors lightly, and I don't like being lied to, and that's something that Stanton Friedman and I both agreed on, and that's why we both got into ufology to begin with, solely for that reason. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go, and I've got shopping to unpack. I came in for the shops and I've taken my jacket off and started recording. So listen, I've got shopping to put away, I've got chicken sitting there if my cat's not already discovered it. So I will catch you all soon, and hopefully join me in the next one, and I can get into this a bit more and try and keep it on point without getting into too many tangents. But I'm who I am, I'll tell it how it is, and you know, I can only do my best and explain it to you all as well as I can, and once I do that, if the world still doesn't want to listen, then that's the world's problem. But I'm not going to sit and not put this information out just simply because no one's listening to me. When I say no one, I mean the people that I had repeatedly tried to get hold of throughout the years, people that claim to be serious UFO researchers that are nothing but talking heads. So there's going to be heads rolling when this information comes out, when I get my follow-up done, which I am still furiously working on. But this is a follow-up to Corroborating Evidence, UFO Investigation, the Millennium. This is majestic evidence, UFOs, from sensational to scientific. The Pentagon's hunt for the UAPs forensically debunked, and UAP mystery ended by NASA's own .gov archives. So we'll be talking more about this in the next video. For the moment, I'm going to take a little bit of time out and go and get my shopping away and try and live a normal life for 5 minutes. So till then, thanks for tuning in, and I'll hopefully catch you in the next one. Till then, cheers.